Hello, hello, my brothers and sisters. This is Garrett Bake, your brother in arms, and welcome to another episode of The Tactical Businessman. Today's topic, the butterfly effect. What in the hell is that? So, I have to start this off by saying I may or may not have been online surfing. There are periods of time during the day when I do like disconnect and surf. And I'd heard about this quite a few years ago, but didn't really understand it. And so I saw somebody who had posted on it and I started to research it. And what I found out was like extremely interesting. Extremely interesting. Now, I want to tell you this story before I talk more about the butterfly effect. My oldest son is 17 years old. He's going to graduate from high school this year. Yes, I know some of you are like, oh, congratulations. And some of you are like, oh, man, you're going to be so much happier when he leaves. Guess what? For me, it's kind of both. It depends on the day, right? Some days I love my son. Some days, not so much. But here's the truth of it all. My son, my 17-year-old son, is exactly like me. Exactly like me. I'm like, how does this happen? You know, how does he end up patterning his life just like me? And I realized that since he was born, he has been nothing but absorbing information, absorbing the patterns and behaviors of those around him, especially his parents, right? His father and his mother. And I look back at the good things that I did, but I also look back at the bad things. Because guess who has a temper? My son, just like me. Guess who likes to storm off and slam his door when things don't go his way? That's right, my son, just like me. Guess who likes to sit on the toilet and play on his phone? That's right, my son, just like me. None of you judge me because I know you're just like me. But what I mean is like he's got these same patterns and behaviors. And I see how he interacts with his brothers and his sisters, his tonalities, the phrases that he uses, like all of these things. It's literally word for word, either mine or my wife's. Now, most of it is mine, which in some cases is a good thing, but in some cases it's not. And for the longest time, I'd get pissed off and frustrated because why? He wasn't doing things the way I wanted him to. But the truth is he was doing them exactly the way that I'd shown him to do them. Crazy, right? Like you think your kids aren't paying attention. Even when they're not paying attention, they're paying attention. Now, this butterfly effect. What is the butterfly effect? There's a scientist named Edward Lorenz, and what he was researching was weather patterns, and more specifically about tornadoes, right? What a butterfly effect is, or says, is that one incident that seems isolated is actually dependent on, or let me switch that around. There's a dependence between an initial incident and things that happen afterwards that may seem completely unrelated. So there's an initial incident that happens, and then there's a series of other things that are dependent or sensitive to that initial thing that happened. I would say he stumbled across it, right? He was using a computer. He entered some numbers wrong and found that by entering like 1/100th of a number wrong, that it changed the complete scenario. He was, again, working in predicting weather. And 1/100th of a number entered wrong, a completely different weather scenario, a completely different weather pattern. Now, what does this mean? This meant that in theory, right, and he would speak on this, in theory, the flap of a butterfly's wings in one region eventually could have effects on the weather pattern of tornadoes in another. i.e., one action, although what may seem completely unrelated at the time, is tied to future patterns and behaviors. One thing. So one initial condition, the location of the butterfly, the consequences would be the direction, frequency, and intensity of a tornado. When you think about this, it's kind of a head scratcher. Like, I get it. I'm not a scientist either. But the interesting thing is the theory behind it, right? One incident that you think, one condition, one thing that happens, one action that's completely unrelated as far as what you think, could affect, or does affect in this case, things way down the road that seem completely unrelated. Now, how does this apply to you? I want you to think about this in the eyes of a business owner, right? You're a businessman. You're a high-level executive. You're an entrepreneur. Like, doesn't matter. You're in a place where you make decisions. Here we go. Ready? Joe, your employee, says, hey, I know I don't have any more time, but my son's really sick. Can I go home and take care of him? Well, he doesn't have any time, so according to the letter of the law, it's no. According to the spirit of the law, he's a father and he wants to take care of his sick son, it's yes. Now, one decision, one condition, one action that you take, his son doesn't know who you are. Frankly, his son doesn't care who you are. One action that you take, one action, by saying yes or no, let's just in this case say no, affects the future of this child. How? How? Because if this child doesn't have his father there with him, what is he going to think? That his father loves him or his father hates him? Is he going to think that his father's going to be there for him or his father's not going to be there for him? Is he going to think that work is more important or that family is more important? Think about that for a minute. When I started to think about it in that context, like, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, how I treat those who work around me affects their family and therefore their future generations. Because guess what? Let's take this employee, his son, again, never meets you, never has any interaction with you. But this one incident when he was sick and needed dad didn't show up because of you. You said he couldn't go home. So then he takes it internally that business, i.e. work, is more important than family. He grows up with this pattern. He teaches it to his kids, who teach it to their kids, who teach it to their kids. And you see one condition, one action adversely affected generations. It's crazy, right? Now, if we believe this principle, if we believe that it's true, that this butterfly effect does in fact happen, then why aren't we more attentive to it? Why aren't we more attentive to our actions? And not just the action at the time, like, I really want this right now, but the lasting and compounding effects, i.e. the butterfly effect. I cannot change that I was an asshole dad. I cannot change that I tried to force my son to play sports because I love sports so much. I can't change that. So now I already know my son is going to have this pattern with his kids. Like, it's going to affect him. Now, same principle, I can change this. And this is what I've been working on over the last couple of years, is connecting with my son in the space and time that he wants to connect versus where I want to connect. So, can it be reversed? I don't think it can be reversed, but I do think it can be replaced with a new pattern. Again, going back to this interaction with my son. I always thought the only way that I was going to interact with my children was through sports. I love sports. Like, I was an athlete through high school, but I wanted to be better. Wasn't any better. Couldn't make it to college or pros. Only had 2 Division III scholarships in for football. That's right, Division III. Not so good. But I love sports, and so I thought that was how I was going to connect with my son. And so I would force him to play sports. Like, I remember he was 5 years old. I coached his soccer team. And I remember everybody running down and forth, back and forth on the field, chasing the soccer ball like 5-year-olds do, except for my son, who was standing at midfield crying because he didn't want to be there. And I would yell at him, "Chase the ball! Go get the ball! Kick the ball!" And he wouldn't kick the ball. And then I would give him like the dirty dad eyes, like, "I can't believe you did that." Like, how did that shape his behavior? I got a lot of making up to do, right? I got to make sure this butterfly effect is a positive one, not a negative one. So over the last couple of years, I've been searching for the way to connect with him on his level, form a bond on his level, teach him a new pattern. And so it started off with video games like Call of Duty. We'd sit there and we wouldn't play all day, and I'd play with him for half an hour or 45 minutes. And we'd just play video games. There wasn't a lot of conversation, just him and I playing video games. And yeah, he would whoop my ass. It'd been a few years since I played. But that's how it started. And though it's morphed, it's changed to where now my son and I have daily text conversations back and forth, which is not something we ever had. Like, we never really had open communication. And it's different communication though. Like, it's 2019 almost. So it's memes, right? Memes and GIFs and little short clips. Like, that's what he loves. And I picked up on that. So we started having messages back and forth, but trying to speak in like code, like memes, GIFs, you know? And so the other day he's like, Dad, I want to go to this basketball game at one of the local universities here. They invited him, you know. He's like, can I go with my friends? And I was like, does that mean that you don't want to go with me? And you know, he, of course, that's not what he means, but, you know, I'm just kind of poking at him. And so then I sent a meme of a really old guy, like in his 80s, trying to run around a track. You can get the mental image. And then he's like, no, that's not what I mean. And then I send one that, you know, it shows a guy crying. And then he sends me one back that it's a cartoon, but, you know, it's a cartoon character hugging a little boy, you know, like comforting him. You know, it was this back and forth thing, and it seems so simplistic, and I'm sure many of you are rolling your eyes right now, but for us, that's a connection point. That allows us to connect. So instead of me trying to force him to connect the way I want to connect, we're now connecting the way that he wants to connect. Again, this butterfly effect. He's now learning a new pattern to where when his kids are born and start to grow up, they may not like video games. They may like sports, or they may like something else. But he's understanding that the importance is the connection point, not necessarily the method behind it. Now, we've talked about business. We've talked about personal life. Like, this applies to everything. So take a moment before every critical decision that you make. Take a moment and ask yourself, what are the lasting effects of this action? What are the lasting effects? Not just for me, but for those around me. Because maybe you can positively affect Joe the worker's family, his son, and generations to come. Maybe you can change the way that your son sees you and interacts with his kids, and therefore from them forward. I believe that this butterfly effect is real because I've seen it and I've experienced it. So the question I have for you is, what are you going to do about it? You just obtain a new piece of knowledge. You can crumple it up and throw it in the trash. Sure. Didn't cost you anything. Or you can see where in your life and where in your business you can apply this to start to shift generations. Shift generations, because that's what you are as a business owner, as a high-level executive, as any type of supervisor. You have that capability to shift generations. So take it seriously. Take it seriously, because it's a big, big deal. All right. That is it for today. Listen, the new year's coming. I got this free 14-day challenge coming. It's going to be exciting. I'm like a little kid in a candy store. But listen, life is all about action, right? Let's make sure we're taking the right action. Let's make sure that our actions are taking us where we want to go. And more importantly, that they're creating a positive future for those around us. As always, my brothers and sisters, stay safe. And we'll see you on the next one.